and this actually doesn't apply to just booze, it applies to everything in your life. By being more present, being more aware, operating a high level of consciousness, you're going to discover all sorts of fascinating and wonderful things that ultimately can completely change your life. Like, isn't that a cool thing? And noticing what I'm saying, I'm not saying you have to be sober, but mindfully drinking, whoa, that's a powerful thing.
You can't abuse me on YouTube video
Oh.
now. That's not fair. So anyway, here we are. Ellie was taking the piss out of me because she thinks I can't count, which is fair because every time I say we've got 5 takes or something, I hold up the wrong amount of fingers. Anyhow, today we're going to be talking about why you can't just have one, like why you can't just have one drink. And yeah, we're like it's something that comes up for a lot of people. I think I remember having to go at myself again and again and again. Like I even wrote down on a piece of paper once, as like in a motivational kind of journal fashion, why would you have more than 1 or 2 or 3, man? Like if you know that 1 or 2 makes you feel a certain way, why would you do it? Why wouldn't you just stop? And at the time, it felt to me like if I just had a bit more willpower, if I just had a bit more something, then I'd be able to kind of rein myself in. But the reality is that the moment you put alcohol in your system, a whole bunch of shit is happening that is collapsing all of that kind of good intent and, the kind of, yeah, I'm only going to go and have a few. We've all had the experience of that melting in front of our very eyes, and then we end up staying out for 10 or whatever. But it's, so yeah, it's a good question. And it doesn't mean that you're broken if you find yourself unable to just have 1 or 2
No.
or 3. And so, yeah, we just wanted to talk about that, really.
Well, there's something physiologically that's happening, right? And as a drinker, I would have never noticed it because I wasn't paying attention to it.
Yeah.
But as a drinker, if you do pay attention to it, it'll blow your mind because what's happening kind of very, I'll put it quite crudely, when blood alcohol content is rising, which is roughly 20 minutes, you're getting what we experience as some people call it euphoria or the feeling of relaxation or
The buzz or whatever.
the buzz. But that only lasts for 20 minutes. And then what goes up must come down. So blood alcohol content starts to fall. And to counteract the let's call it the high, the excessive levels of dopamine, you get this dysphoric effect. And it doesn't feel pleasant. It feels bloody awful.
Mm.
And that for me, like when I did recognize what it was, when I was mindfully drinking, which, isn't something that I would have done naturally. But when I decided I was paying attention to it, that dysphoric effect, at kind of like the tamer end, it's like agitation and it just feels kind of uncomfortable. But and that's the thing that's having us reach for another drink. If you let that play out, it goes on for like 4 to 5 fucking hours.
Yeah.
And it's really not nice. And so this is why we reach for another drink typically. But for me as a drinker, like I would have never paid attention to that. I would have just had some kind of internal cue, internal feeling that would have then been, some form of desire to reach for another drink. I think I said recently on a podcast episode, there was a group of my yogi friends talking about this retreat in Italy, and this wine comes out, and they'll pour you a small glass of wine, like they're pointing like this, and I'm going, oh God, like that would have been horrendous for me.
Yeah.
Like here you go, you can have a drink, but you can only have this very, very small amount. That in itself would have induced a level of anxiety, because not that I would have necessarily recognised what was playing out physiologically, but I would have known that even ahead of having one like that, I would have wanted more. And so I think sometimes the choice that people will make is having none instead of having, like, if you know it's just the one, well, I'd rather have none then. And, and our good friend William Porter talks about this in his book. And I'm going to find the chapter to reference because it's really cool.
Do that. I think you pointed out such an important thing that, like, we oftentimes, yes, alcohol explained. We oftentimes talk about, we'll hear people say things like, what is wrong with me? Why can't I just have one? Where they're putting the blame on themselves. But I think what we're really trying to underline here is that is like a physiological thing. That isn't a character thing. That isn't a, It's not a worthiness thing. It's not a strength thing. It is how bodies work. In the same way that if you don't eat for long enough, you get hungry and your body is like, hey, give me food. The same thing, a similar process is happening. It's not the same thing, but a similar process where we put this into our system. As our blood alcohol content falls, our entire system starts begging for alcohol. And you're right, Ellie, because I was in the same boat in that I didn't understand this at first. And for me, there was just the I need another drink feeling. And at least for me, the experience of it wasn't something that I could easily connect to like, oh, this is a like physiological or a biological process. It felt more mental, but again, that's how these things arise, right? Like that's how your body is like, hey, I need you to do this. It is via giving you signals that your brain then interprets as I need another drink. So it makes perfect sense that there wouldn't be, I don't know what to even call it. Like, instead of a rumbly tummy, a rumbly liver. Like we don't get that, right? But instead it is this like need to go grab another drink.
Yeah. And just because I've referenced it, good old Alcohol Explained by William Porter, the chapter is chapter 18, funnily enough entitled, I'd rather have no drinks than just one or two. And there's a specific mindful drinking exercise that he talks about on page 132, 133, which I know a lot of people will have likely have read that, but that for me is gold in terms of like a more in-depth explanation of this and then how to discover it for yourself.
Who knows? It's amazing how we get caught in certain kind of content and books, and we sometimes these things slip through. So definitely a book to check out. And it's funny. I don't think that many people have even stopped to consider it. Like I know, for example, if I think about my dad and how he drinks, or if I think about other people, they would say things like it's just not something they've really stopped to consider. Like, well, why would I start drinking later? Or, oh, I won't start drinking at 1. I'll wait until after the thing. Or like, you've had that experience where you're like out shopping and you think, oh, I just nip to the pub and have a drink. And like for me, like some people will do that, but I didn't do it. I was like, yeah, if I knew there was going to be a bunch of time in between the first drink and the next one, I'd often just start later. I'd never stop to consider why, but I had a bunch of reference points where I had that one drink, like you said, Ellie, or 2 or 3 or whatever, then felt dog shit and ended up basically in the middle of a hangover before I broke. We think about hangovers as the thing that you get when you wake up the next morning. Well, I don't know. Like if you're kind of you're trying to kind of compete with that, your system trying to regulate and kind of get this thing out of you, which is bringing further toxic chemicals into the system. And I'm sure many of us have had that experience of kind of getting the headache and starting to feel really shit while we're still drinking. Then people will often turn to spirits or stronger alcohol and things like that. And so we're all going to be, there's a way that we all work. And of course, there's a way that we're all kind of different. I never, that feeling of like the kind of high, even if I was following up with another drink and another drink, it really never lasted that long for me. I got like an hour or 2 at the most of being able to top that up, and then it would just disappear. And so I think that's why I ended up reaching for other things, looking for other substances and stuff quite quickly. For other people, maybe that changes, but we all go the same way. That time window, in my experience, decreases over time. We end up drinking more to try and counteract it. Then you have the well, I was going to say the benefit is certainly not a benefit. The wonderful benefit of having more alcohol for your system to clear out just to maintain the same impact and effect. And then over time, you get to a point where you barely get any of it. I basically, by the time I stopped drinking, had all the wanting, all the kind of, oh God, I want the drink. I'd drink it, that would go. But then basically there would really not be any kind of perceived lift or buzz or anything. But the chasing of that, what it used to be like for a bit in my early 20s and teenage years, kept me going for ages until I finally got the memo. I was like, oh, my system's, it's just not fun this anymore. It just isn't fun. So yeah, I just made that point because I think for most of us, we probably haven't stopped to actually just reflect and think, what's my drinking patterns? What are the cycles that I'm caught in? How does it actually play out for me? And that, I know that in William's book, he has a bunch of, exercises where you can reflect and think about those things. It's very powerful to do that.
We don't. It's also, I think another thing is it's very easy to blame other things. So we don't like look outside or look inside and feel that feeling. Like Sam, you were talking about like stopping and drinking earlier in the day. I didn't do a ton of day drinking so I don't like American football at all. Like, it's just not my sport. I get bored. But while I was drinking, I made a point to watch a lot of football because it starts at like noon here, and goes all day. And what do you do when you watch a football game? Obviously, you drink beer, right? So I'd sit down at noon with a 6-pack and I would drink the entire 6-pack during the first game. And then by like 5 o'clock, I was fucking cranky and angry and miserable. Now, I never attributed that to the beer. I thought it was because I hated my job. I thought it was because tomorrow's Monday and the weekend's almost over. Like, I was always attributing my mood or the way I felt to some external factor, when in those scenarios, especially in the scenario with drinking while watching football, like, it just was my body screaming for more alcohol. I just didn't see it that way. The anxiety that it caused in me, the feelings that it caused in me, I thought it was just because my quote unquote life sucked at the time. But that wasn't the case at all. Now looking back, it's clear as day. But at the time, it wasn't at all.
Well, I think this is just like generally, it's a big waving of the flag for just paying attention. Like, you don't have to, if you're a drinker and you're listening to this, you don't have to, right, I'm going to stop and make a big declaration. You don't even have to want to be sober. Like, I didn't want to be sober at the beginning. It's just a raising of a level of consciousness. And I have so many conversations with people in my life that drink, all sorts of different levels. But I love having conversations with people where they're just beginning to question it somewhat. Not necessarily because they want to be a sober person or because they think that they've got a problem or they don't want to have a problem. It's not that. It's just, oh, hang on a minute. I've realized this thing. Oh, I've started to notice. And I think some of it is an age thing, right? Like, as we get older, we've all got different things going on, and you'll often hear people talking about like they can't tolerate hangovers in a way that they're perhaps used to before. And of course, there's the subject of tolerance and all of those things. But the point being that, and this actually doesn't apply to just booze, it applies to everything in your life. By being more present, being more aware, operating a high level of consciousness, you're going to discover all sorts of fascinating and wonderful things that ultimately can completely change your life. Like, isn't that a cool thing? And noticing what I'm saying, I'm not saying you have to be sober, but mindfully drinking, wow, that's a powerful thing. That's a really powerful thing. Like, I think, we've all said this in different ways. I have no opinion necessarily on whether somebody else drinks or not. What I want people to realize is what's available to them in these lives that are relatively short, like, let's face it. And we're fortunate in that every day we're working with people that have had a glimpse of like what might be possible for them, having lived however many years thinking, well, this is just how it is, and almost like, on the hamster wheel. And then they've had this flash of like, oh, like maybe there's something else here. So it's curiosity, it's cultivating that and an open mind and not, like removing any tension around it has to be a particular way. There's so many times in coaching conversations, and I always have to do it really slowly in case I fuck it up and get it the wrong way around. But this thing of like drinking bad, not drinking good, like, it's not like that. It's not like that. There's so much available by just being curious and just being open.
You reminded me, I forgot about this. I can't remember whether I told you this, both of you this or not. Maybe I did on a podcast a while back, but I was on a train to Manchester not long ago. And it was it was at that time of day where people get on the train and they're carrying drinks to kind of go, then having a couple of pre-drinks or whatever on the way in. And there was this mum was trying to get her son to drink. It was like a mixer kind of thing, like a Jack Daniels and Coke kind of mix or something. And he was like, no, I'm fine. And she gave up in the end. And I heard him say to I think his dad or whoever was there, yeah, to be honest, that 2-pint feeling's all you get, isn't it? Like, and I want to save it for later. He was like, I want to start now because I'm going to get that feeling here and then I'm going to feel shit all afternoon. I'm going to save it. So that's like, we kind of know this stuff. We did that extra layer of reflection and awareness, as you say, Ellie, is so key. And just to kind of go back to where we started, what people are noticing is the pointy end of the neurological physiological piece, which really, like, ultimately, we won't have time to go into everything today, but the moment you put booze into your system and there's this cascade of neurotransmitters and chemical reactions, and GABA gets released, dopamine gets released, all these things start moving through your system wants homeostasis. Like, it instantly just starts trying to regulate you. So you're fighting that, which we talk about as tolerance, or, you know, the drink wearing off or whatever. We kind of have our colloquial storytelling way of thinking about it. We don't kind of relate to it scientifically very often, do we? But your system's got your back, and it's instantly trying to bring you back to that. So then you have to drink more to be able to. And that's, like you said, Scott, just to double underline what you said, Ben, like, that's just biology. That's not like a, doesn't matter if you're a lawyer or a you know, a teacher or a creator or whatever. Like, it just, alcohol doesn't pick and choose like that. It really doesn't give a shit what you do for work. It doesn't really care about any of that kind of stuff. So of course there'll always be nuances in how we kind of experience life and experience substances. However, bigger picture, like, we're fighting that. So why can't you just have one? Well, there are some people that do manage to just have one, but they experience what Ellie was talking about afterwards. They get that dysphoric feeling. They have to, you know, so that's why you're always going to be working against that. And it's not about character or willpower or strength or any of that stuff. It's just how it goes. And so, and I don't know how many people know that. More people know that now than they did 10 years ago. But I mean, a lot of the time the blame is put on the user, not the substance. But we don't we don't have a go at heroin addicts, or people that are, you know, have whatever what language that we use or don't use around this stuff. Because, like, oh gosh, I just, you know, I've got this feeling I need to have another hit or whatever. You know, it's clear to us why, but because we have a special category for alcohol, we don't even relate to it as a drug, and we have these euphemisms like hangover, and we don't talk about withdrawal. We don't think about it in that way, but that stuff's playing out, like, for all of us, right? And we've spoken about this lots of times on the podcast, but to strip it back and look at what's really going on can be helpful. Not so you have to stop or anything, but just maybe you don't have to drink as much. Maybe there is a beautiful life that's present and completely alcohol free for you. Maybe, who knows? And like Ellie said, you don't have to put yourself in this massive pressure cooker and tell yourself it has to look like this, or you've got to be completely free, but just to start looking and realize it's not your fault. There's that Laura McCowan thing, you know, it's not our fault that we've ended up where we are, but it is our responsibility to reflect and be aware. And yeah, I think it was Laura that said that. I think it's a powerful way to relate to it.
And interestingly, you mentioned about the people that maybe can just have one. A friend of mine came to mind. The reason that she only, I used to look at her like out on a night out, she'd have a glass of wine, and I'd already be on the third one, and she's still on that first glass of wine. And I talked to her once to find, like, what's the dealio? Because she never actually would even finish the first one. Why? She didn't like it. She didn't like it. She was buying that first drink to, you know, so-called like fit in with everybody, and she didn't like it. She'd have a couple of sips of it, remind herself of, like, oh, it tastes like shit. I don't like it. Don't like how it makes me feel. And there's the paying attention bit. So, you know, then you see it for what it is. Like, say, I've no opinion on whether somebody drinks or not, but, like, be informed and be aware, because for so many years I drank mindlessly, just, you know, just doing my thing. And, you know, I wouldn't change anything, but that moment of realization of what it actually is, like, I remember being incensed. I was like, holy shit, like, there's so many people that are drinking to relax. And here's, like, not just a story about it, but science. Here's the science, courtesy actually of you, Mr. Scott. Here's the science of how it works. Like, you are increasing the levels of stress hormones in the body. So you can't feel, it's impossible to feel more relaxed. You might have the illusion of being anaesthetized for a bit. That's something different. So yeah, it's just about figuring it out for yourself.
There's going to be a bill to pay in the morning. That's for sure.
Oh my
The
God,
thing
I'm
is, I knew
absolutely-
that. I
sorry,
knew that,
Scott.
but I thought that was also the cost of being more relaxed, right? I thought, like, that bill to pay was just because my life was miserable in one way or another, right? It did just, and I know it sounds silly. Like, looking at it now, I'm like, what was I thinking? But it's the spell we all fall under with this. Like, we just don't see it until we do. And I love that. Like, personally, like, there have been times in my life, this is probably the biggest, if not one of the biggest, where it's like, oh, I am so unbelievably wrong.
Yeah.
Like I have it like so bad. I love that. I love that feeling because it's like, whoa. Because, you know, I really did. I really thought my life was just like there was something wrong with me, or I wasn't happy, or it was this, or it was that. And it was just that I was cranking myself up with a stress inducing drink every night. And I thought it was helping. And it was amazing when I found out it wasn't. And it was amazing how I began to feel as I let it go.
Yeah, that was my big thing. All courtesy of you was be willing to be wrong.
Mhm.
And it's changed my life and many other people's. I'm absolutely fucking hot as balls. Like, I'm so glad that we're not
It's so
recording
hot.
on this.
We've been recording. Yeah, like, I think that's probably it feels like a
I'm
really nice
fine.
place to leave it.
I'm
So like
totally
we
cool.
can go and put
Yeah.
our fans back on because it is fucking hot. It's ridiculous in the UK. We're just not built for this, are we, Ellie Craig? Other people are like, yeah, 35 isn't that warm. I'm like, yeah, in a world without air conditioning and all the rest of it, which is pretty uncommon here. It's
We should translate that to regular degrees. That's like 95 degrees.
Regular
Right,
Or
warm,
degree.
huh?
like,
It's in May as well. It's like the hottest day on record in May ever since records began,
Yeah,
or whatever. So
that's
it's
brutal.
warm. It's a warm day. I mean, yeah. Anyway, we could be very British and talk about the weather for the next hour, but let's not do that. Let's high five and say that's a job well done, and that we'll see you all really soon. Right.
Bye.
Love you.